Welcome to Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd, and seated next to me we have Professor Aubrey, and this week we are going to show our age by discussing some of our favorite music videos.
That's right.
Yes, now, as a disclaimer, anytime we talk about choices like this, we always just use the word favorite and not greatest. Because, again, we're giving our opinion here. You may not agree with our opinion, but opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one.
That's right. We're not doing it based on any sort of objective criteria.
Yes, so...
like record sales or video plays or commercial value.
Exactly. We're just talking about music videos that at some point in time, whether we saw it when they were first released, or whether it's something we may have picked up on recently, something that kind of caught our eye, and we just want to talk about our love for that particular video, that particular artist.
Yep.
All right. How about I dive into my first choice?
That'd be great, Tim.
We're going to dive right in here, folks, into the deep end, but here we go.
What's your first one?
Number one, it's a band I've talked about before on the show, but the song I usually talk about, it was the first music video they ever made, which came out in 1988.
You're such a tease.
Damn right I'm a tease. I don't get much chance to be a tease in real life, so, I'm going to be a tease here and draw it out, It's like the people come here every week, and what am I going to give them? Yeah, this is my list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, goodbye.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you're going too long.
Yeah.
I'm saying that you're hiding the lead.
That's right, because I wanted to reveal it.
Okay. I wanted to build the tension.
Yeah, there's already tension here, folks. Yeah, like I said, this band in 88 had an album out called Injustice for All. Then they released their very first music video from it, One, and it was the only music video that they had made up to that point. And a couple years later, in 1991, they released what is commonly known as the Black Album, and the world, a couple months before Nirvana and Smells Like Teen Spirit hit, was welcomed to the noise that is Enter Sandman from Metallica. I'm sure you recall that video.
For Enter Sandman?
Enter Sandman, yeah.
I mean, it was mostly a performance video, wasn't it?
It did have a performance. It was done in strobe lights, so it's one of those videos that if you have epileptic type conditions, you may not necessarily want to watch, but the band performs it, but they also have like this old man that's in the video, and they have a bunch of action scenes going on, like the end of the video when James Hetfield yells, boom! That's when you see a semi that's chasing after somebody that was sleeping in a bed outside. The person that was sleeping in the bed saw the semi-truck coming at him, gets out of the bed and starts running at top speed, and then when the semi-truck hits the bed, that's when James Hetfield goes, boom! And, what an awesome video. Now, fans of this band will probably say that this is when Metallica made the transition from metal to rock. Because if you listen to some of their previous albums or some of their latest albums, because they kind of have gone back to, their roots in a lot of ways recently, but a lot of their earlier stuff was really intricate and really long. Lots of solos, really long stuff, but this was just pared down in simplicity for simplicity's sake, which shows that sometimes being simple, having a very simple riff that even, if I spent 5 minutes could, I could probably find that on the guitar and be able to play that, compared to something like Master of Puppets.
Mm-hmm.
But this, in a lot of ways, did kind of open the general public's perception, I guess, to what metal could do. Because, I've spoke about it. If we go back in the archives to the tribute episode we did for Kurt Cobain, we talked about this song briefly and how this was really like the first metal song that you would hear in dentist office or doctor's office or something like that. You didn't hear metal really being played much at all unless it was people actively listening to it, like in their car, cassette player back in the day, or anything like that. But this is like one of the first widely accepted metal songs.
Yeah, I remember it being the first metal song I ever heard, and in fact, I didn't recognize it as a metal song. It's a very soft metal, I would say. It's like bronze.
Yeah, now the band Metallica are what I
Did
would.
you get it? Metallica, bronze.
We did it. Pun people. There we go. But Metallica, I would put in the category of musicians that are students of music. What do I mean by that? They listen and have been inspired by a lot of unique stuff, not just metal bands. One benefit of listening to their double cover album, Garage Inc., is, hearing Metallica cover some Bob Seger and also cover some obscure Thin Lizzy songs and stuff like that. Like, they have a lot of influences that aren't just, turn the, volume on your guitar amp to the highest volume and go like that. I mean, they are students of music. They love music, and the more they listen to, the more their music becomes varied and different.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Metallica?
Well, just what I said. That's my experience with Metallica was seeing that video. And then the other one for one, I guess. Both were very soft for metal. Didn't you think?
For one started off soft, but at the end, the darkness imprisoning me section of the song,
Mm.
that's the point where, as a kid in '88, I'm throwing up the horns and like, oh my God, I love this type of deal. Whereas with Enter Sandman, like I said, I think to your point, the Enter Sandman was their transition from metal to more traditional rock, the simple stuff. Like, you could see Aerosmith conceivably making a song that simple with that type of recognizable riff.
Yeah.
And of course, insert your bad drummer jokes here. Everybody hates Lars.
I mean, he's just such a jerk. As far as I know, like that could be his persona.
It is tough. Yeah, like, I don't know the man personally. All I've seen are him in interviews, and he just comes off as a pretentious douchebag in interviews.
Yeah.
Granted, maybe I come off like a pretentious douchebag on this show, so maybe if he listened to Friends Talking Nerdy, and hi Lars if you are, maybe he would think that I'm a douchebag.
Yeah, and even though we called you a douchebag, we're glad you're a listener.
How
Pretty
about
funny.
you dive into your first choice here?
Okay, my first choice is Walk This Way. Run DMC and Aerosmith.
Mm-hmm.
And we just were watching that video the other day, just out of pure enjoyment, because it's really good video, and it was a breakout into mainstream of rap that had not happened yet. And it made music, hip hop music, acceptable on the mainstream. And it's just a funny video, right? They're yelling at each other because they don't like each other's music, but it's like peanut butter and chocolate, right? Then they get together, and it's even better than it was when they were separate.
Yeah, we kind of talked somewhat similar about the whole idea of what is mainstream, because if you think about that, there is, especially when it comes to, music labeling for genres, there is that tinge of racism involved.
Mm-hmm.
Because mainstream means white people started liking it. And that is...
You know what was going through my head was that what I was going to say instead of hip hop music was music made by black and brown people.
If you really, you don't have to dig deep in terms of doing like a search or something like that, but think of the fact that Smokey Robinson is still out touring, but he's touring and doing shows in casinos, whereas Paul McCartney, a contemporary and a person who was inspired by Smokey Robinson and who on early Beatles albums would sing Smokey Robinson songs, is selling out stadiums.
Yeah, I mean, true. The Beatles got bigger than him though.
It's just,
They got bigger than anyone. So it's a bad
but my point is,
comparison.
but again, though, think about how the Beatles have been pushed throughout, by, their record company and everything, and how, music by black artists is not really, it's there. If it's in the immediate sense, it's there, but after years, it will go away from public conscious and not be brought up again.
Right. And I feel like what I just said there was wrong because if we say, oh, the white artist was more popular and that's why they make more money, then we're perpetuating what was going on in the 60s when the Beatles were more popular. And we know what was going on in the 60s and it was way fucked up.
Yeah, and to be fair to the Beatles, want to put it out there. I mean, Smokey Robinson himself, using this example, will be the very first one to tell you that the Beatles themselves went out of their way to talk to the press and talk to anybody that would ask and say, we like Smokey Robinson. We like the music from Motown. This is why we're singing it. It's good music. Buy these records. Beatles were doing the right thing. It's their label that didn't necessarily do it because they were going for a particular audience. And it was radio stations that weren't saying, hey, this is a new song from the Beatles, but it was originally by this person. Also, if you go into the 80s, you didn't have people like 80s or 90s. Like, it blew my mind that only a few years ago, I discovered the fact that Black Crowes song Hard to Handle is a cover of an Otis Redding song.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Nobody on MTV said, here's the Black Crowes song that's a cover of an old Otis Redding song, even though there's another contemporary band of the Black Crowes that was not as popular called Ugly Kid Joe that did a cover of the Cats in the Cradle.
Uh-huh.
And I do remember specifically the VJs on MTV would talk about that this was a cover of a Harry Chapin song. And it's like there was not. It would be one thing if they the VJs at the time did say, hey, if this is an Otis Redding song, then it would be up to the person watching MTV at that particular point to be interested and go, oh, Otis Redding did that. Let's find out some of his other stuff. But I had to find out only a few years back. And then think of, too, that Questlove documentary, Summer of Soul.
Mm-hmm.
How what is essentially the black music Woodstock of the 60s was kept in a vault. I mean, that is a crime. And that, yeah. So again, I'm not knocking the Beatles here. Like I said, the Beatles, I think, did the very responsible thing of, shouting to the hills, we love this music. You should buy it too. But there were other forces that kind of kept it down. And it's kind of the same thing with hip hop too, because also too, I think if you think back to the Run DMC documentary that's on Paramount Plus, they talked about the fact that black audiences are very much aware that once a black artist hits quote unquote the mainstream, they will either lose that artist or lose that form of music.
Mm-hmm.
So the black audience, were not exactly thrilled with the success of Walk This Way either, because this was something that was theirs, and yet it was being taken, something else being taken again. It's a complicated mess. Music history is,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And the more I think about it, yeah, like a lot of black artists throughout the years do not get the recognition they deserve, do not get the accolades.
Don't get the Lifetime Achievement Awards.
Exactly. Like Morris Day and the Time. I remember when they played a free show in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Oh, cool.
Cool, yes. But why is a band like Morris Day and the Time playing a free show? I mean, they couldn't get a state fair at the very least. You know what I mean?
Yeah, whoa.
And I don't remember the exact situation. Maybe it was a charity thing or something like that. But there are just too many artists. And think of hip hop as well, like MC Light.
Oh, yeah.
Great artist, but do you really hear about her today? Whereas, there was, who's the woman that sang that song? It's my party and I'll cry if I want to.
Doris Day.
No, somebody, but people still talk about her. I mean, they talk about her because I guess recently it became known that the woman who sang that was a lesbian.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And so what?
It really does seem like that there is a conscious push by somebody, by some group of people, to make sure that the impact of Black music is not really spread into the history books.
Yes, because if you can appreciate anything someone does creatively, you are recognizing their humanity, and that is bad for business.
Yeah. But let's not end this on a bad note in regards to this song. Let's talk about the positive impact. Because having been as critical of the term mainstream as I have been these past few minutes, I do really appreciate the fact that this song was there to open up hip hop to me. Am I the world's biggest hip hop fan? No, but do I recognize what an achievement this song was? The fact that hip hop and rock were able to meet together and have that meeting of the minds and give people the chance to say, I didn't know it could do that. Let me try something else.
Mm.
Type of deal. So I don't want to be entirely negative about this song, people, but it is important to recognize some negative factors when it comes to the music industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
With anything, there's ambiguity. With any, there's no black or white, as we often find out on this show. There's a lot of gray area.
Nuance, people. Yeah.
Nuance and sophistication.
Yeah, speaking of black and white, how about going to my next choice?
Yes, please.
All right, this video was shot in black and white.
Oh, there you go.
Hence the segue there. From one of my favorite bands, and this was the last album they did in the 90s before their lead singer, Rob Halford, left the band, which lasted about, I believe, 15 years or something like that. Painkiller, Judas Priest. It's another video that if you do have symptoms of epilepsy, maybe don't watch it because it's a lot. But just one hell of a fast song, like faster than I believe Judas Priest really did at that particular time or since. And two great guitar solos. The guitar solos, when I hear them, they're like it's a perfect soundtrack to a car chase scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like you hear it and you expect like people driving really fast on a highway, like shooting at each other, and it's exciting, it's engaging, and I really love this. And Judas Priest, I'm glad they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm really glad that Rob Halford actually got a chance to be able to do that duet with Dolly Parton. I mean, that was awesome. Also, too, the fact that shortly after the Painkiller album is when Rob Halford came out.
Yeah.
It was funny, too, when he came out because he, pointed out that, the outfits that Judas Priest wore, the leather outfits and stuff like that, weren't biker outfits. They were S&M outfits, people.
Yeah, totally.
And it's like
we were so repressed, nobody wanted to admit they knew what that was.
Yeah.
And then the kids didn't know what it was.
They just thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And then by the time he actually came out...
Because it is cool.
There you go. But the beauty of that, too, is that like, he's one of those people that, because he came out, gave a different perspective to a lot of people that may not have necessarily known a gay person at that particular time.
When did he do that, you said?
Early 90s.
Was it before Ellen?
Before Ellen, yeah.
Yeah. And we don't hear about that,
Yeah. And I'm sure there's been some metal fans who said some derogatory things, but overall, I don't remember there being a backlash. Like, he was still sold albums with his solo bands, and Judas Priest, once he rejoined that band because of the shenanigans in the music industry, making it to where live touring is the only way to make any real money there. Once he rejoined Judas Priest, they're continuing to put out albums and make a lot of music. So, in a lot of ways, he's like the middle Elton John.
Uh-huh.
Who will post kitten photos on Instagram.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, the metal god loves him some kitties. So, any thoughts on Judas Priest?
I just have never, I've never considered them, period, until I met you.
They're so lowbrow.
I mean, I remember the video, and especially the makeup, but it didn't make me want to seek out more.
Yeah, not everybody's going to be for everybody.
No, definitely not.
Yep. All right.
Speaking of, this might not be your favorite song from this person who you are going to meet in a week
As we record this.
as we record this, and that is Time After Time.
From Taylor Dane. No,
by Cyndi Lauper. But I must tell you now that I had a Taylor Dane CD. I got it from the Columbia House CD Club.
Oh, did you do what I used to do? Because a friend told me the secret, like with the Columbia House, like if you send that first $1, they will send you all the albums you want no matter what. But you don't have to return them, and they will just ultimately stop. They're not going to send like like you owe us this amount of money type of deal. So, and they will also not investigate if you do it over and over again with different names at the same address.
Yeah, that was the big thing. Like, but they had to have made so much money off the people who did pay that the probably 10% of people that didn't pay at all.
Well, I mean, from what I understand, to your point, yeah, like less than 10% of the people actually listened to the rules and paid, and also with the Columbia, the record club deal, the albums were made in a different way than albums you would buy in a store. So like cheaper materials,
Right.
and stuff like that. So, in terms of audio quality, if you were an audio connoisseur, they weren't necessarily the go-to place you would get your music from. But if you were a dumb punk kid like me back in Grand Rapids and you wanted to build your music collection fast, get $1.
Yep.
Yep. But Time After Time.
Time After Time. Such a great video. It tells a story. It's a heartbreaking story. Like, I remember watching this video over and over and over again, and just being like so angsty about it, because so basically what happens is that she's living with her boyfriend in a RV and trying to work and be famous, but she can't be famous because she's so poor. She needs to leave, go to Hollywood or LA at least. And so she, in the middle of the night or very early in the morning, she gets packed up in one suitcase and kisses him goodbye and walks away.
But you didn't finish the story there, because he actually ran out of the trailer. He heard her close the door, and then the video ends with both of them at a train station. And, she ultimately gets on a train and rides away, but they had a moment to where I think if anything, because I think of a scene early in that video to where, she joins him at a diner with their friends, and she takes her hat off and shows that she had the orange hair at that particular time. And then he reacted like, oh my God. I don't know why he reacted like that, but the point was they were going down two separate paths.
Right.
And I love the fact that the video pointed that out, but showed that even people that in the now love each other, if the paths separate, it is possible to still be there for them. And, you think about the lyrics, it'll be, if you call, I'll be waiting time after time. I wish I had the lyrics in front of me right now, to make it easier than me stumbling around. But to me, it's a very beautiful song.
Yeah, it's
like
gorgeous.
even if you never watch the video itself and don't have that story for context with the song, it's still just a very beautiful song. Just something that, say to somebody you care about, I'll be there for you type of deal.
Yeah, it's great. And there's actually a version of it that's sung by a jazz duo called Tuck and Patty that I think is the best cover of it I've ever heard.
Interesting.
And so you should check it out.
All right.
Yeah.
Did you check out that song, that Cyndi Lauper song that I sent you via text message with that I found out that Lemmy from Motorhead played bass on?
I think you did tell me about this, but I did not know.
Yes. Yeah, it's not Time After Time, but Lemmy played with Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's funny hearing how really progressive he is when it comes to women, even though he visited a lot of prostitutes over the years.
Right, because sex workers are just workers.
Yeah. But
I'm saying, what I'm saying is that people,
there's a stigma around that profession that should not be there, but the stigma is there. And so when people see that a rock star visits a lot of prostitutes or strippers or something like that, they have that stigma in their head, even though he was a person that understood that, yeah, they're doing a job.
right.
And I'm going to enjoy that job that they do as much as possible. But you can be respectful to a person in that job,
Right. And I mean, that's the whole vice policing thing. And, you think about why those laws came about or what they were intending to do, which is to ensure that basically that women were kept in the home and dependent because it discouraged having multiple relationships. It encouraged monogamy.
Yeah. And in this economy, you can't do that.
Encouraged monogamy.
Yeah, you have to have some sort of multi thing going on to be able to survive these days.
Oh, you mean like multi income?
Well, polyamory, yeah,
Oh.
type of deal. But yeah, like, everybody living in like one commune and I don't know, just everybody boinking each other. Anyway, how about I go on to my next choice?
Yeah, why don't you?
All right. This is a video we popped on before we started the recording here. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it's a song that is kind of a biography in a way of the group in question. From Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Bad Reputation. One hell of a simple song, simple in the sense that like Ramones songs, you brought up the comparison of Joan Jett with the Ramones. It's very apt because it is very simple. Like it's, I believe just like one or two chords. I believe it's a bar chord, so I couldn't play it. But it's still very simple, just the same type of chord. If you're familiar with the song, I'm not going to try to impersonate it here, but Joan Jett, one of the most kick-ass women that has ever strapped on a guitar and sang in a rock and roll band ever.
So true. Absolutely true.
Broke a lot of barriers. I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but she made sure that in, her videos, it was never doing what her fellow bandmate in her 70s band, the Runaways, did, Lita Ford, in terms of like dressing in skimpy outfits and making out or, dry humping the guitar or something like that. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic there, folks, watch the video for Kiss Me Deadly. Lita Ford dry humped a guitar.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, which, her choice, nothing wrong with that per se, but it was something that I feel confident stating that she was told to do, to sell records.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Joan Jett was like, I'm putting on my leather jacket and jeans and I'm going to rock and you're going to fucking like it or go the fuck away from me.
Mm-hmm.
Type of deal. And I love that attitude. Is there not a better definition of a rock artist than that? It's not about making something that's going to make a corporation a lot of money. It's about the rebellion. It's about the attitude. And I loved finding out years after the fact, thanks to a Joan Jett documentary, that it was sort of in a way, thanks to The Who, that helped her solo career kind of lift off because her manager was a guy that by the name of Bill Curbishley, I believe his name was, who was also the manager of The Who. And on the particular album that Bad Reputation is on, there's a song that she covers that was an obscure track from The Who.
Oh.
So nice little bit of history trivia there. But like Joan Jett, one of those icons in rock, she was able to run where Janis Joplin walked. You know, like Janis Joplin opened the door, Joan Jett kicked that door down.
Right, because Janis died. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Janis would have been right there with Joan Jett at that time in history.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I don't know if Janis would have necessarily been making the same type of music that Joan Jett did.
Oh, no. I just meant being who she is as opposed to playing a character.
Yeah, and I mean, at the late 70s, early 80s, like Grace Slick was still a thing, but nobody was looking at Jefferson Starship and thinking they're the greatest fucking band in the world. No, they had their fans, but they were not icons of rock or anything like that. And maybe you could argue that Jefferson Airplane, the original band, were never in that category as well, but Grace Slick still had that persona.
Well, she's got a very interesting voice.
She does. Great songwriter as well. I mean, she wrote White Rabbit after all. But Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, you can't go wrong if you put her music on and just crank the volume knob up as loud as you can.
Agreed.
All right. What is your next choice?
My next choice is Sledgehammer by one Peter Gabriel. This is such a cool video. It is stop motion animation of vegetables and different things.
And him.
Right, and his face. And like it's almost like, that you've got a bald guy, but you've got graphite, little pieces of graphite that you then use a magnet to make a mustache or eyebrows or whatever.
This is how we as kids entertained ourselves in the 80s, folks. Go ahead.
Yeah, this was fun to do in the 80s, was to move graphite with a magnet in order to make a drawing more hirsute.
We could do it for hours.
Just a really interesting video. I think it was groundbreaking at the time, and what didn't tell a story. It was purely art, I mean, stories are art, but it was purely visual. So not much emotional component for me, which is usually not great in terms of my liking something. I like a little emotional connection. But this one, was visually interesting enough, I think, to make it on my list.
Yeah, I think sonically it has that. I mean, it's one of those deals. You hear that little flute or whatever it is that starts that song before it really starts kicking in.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, dogs in the distance hearing a dog whistle. You hear it, you're like, what? And then like it pumps you up. It's a feel. You like how if you're like doing the dishes and this song comes on, you're gonna be dancing along with it.
Yeah.
It's one of those just feel good type of deals. It did blow my mind when I worked at a music store in the 90s, finding out that Peter Gabriel was the original lead singer of Genesis.
Right. I knew that.
I did not know that.
I knew that like from the beginning. I don't know how I knew that, but I did.
Yeah, I was not as cultured as you were, of course.
No, I mean, clearly you are more knowledgeable about all of this stuff and probably were back then too.
Yeah, I knew, I love me some Def Leppard, yeah, and that type of deal. Now, this album, great song, great video. I did actually send it to my youngest, Luke, the other day, because he's made some stop motion videos before in the past, and he ended up enjoying it as well. As far as what the impact it had on MTV, I think it did show people that music videos can be more than just a camera pointed at a band playing a song. It doesn't even have to be a story, to your point. It could just be interesting things that you see on the television, but a music video is a video. It's a visual element. And, music throughout the ages has had visual elements before.
Right, like opera.
Opera, Broadway musicals, stuff like that. It's only been recently, recently in terms of history, in terms of like the 40s and 50s, to where people started expecting music to just be on like an LP or a cassette or something like that. For the most part, throughout previous history, there was
It
some
was
sort of
just
visual
art
element.
performance.
Yeah, exactly. But one hell of a video. Anything else you want to say about Peter Gabriel?
Nope.
All right. How about I go on to my next choice?
That sounds great.
All right. The next choice here, if you remember a few episodes back, and I played that little audio clip of me and my kids and Professor Aubrey going to see Monday Night Raw, you would actually hear a little bit of this song playing. This came out in '88. It was produced, some of the tracks on the album were produced by one Mick Jagger. Living Colour, Cult of Personality. I didn't even find out until years later that the opening voice that you hear at the start of the song is Malcolm X.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But they have, historical figures' voices peppered throughout the song. What I remember most, even at the time when it came out in '88, and I was only 11 or 12 when this first hit MTV, but even at that age, it did feel weird seeing downtown Julie Brown talking about how unique it was that black people were in a rock band.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, at that time, I knew of Little Richard. I knew of Chuck Berry. How the hell could she say something so stupid? But of course, it was downtown Julie Brown. But this goes to speak about the importance of people that give you the music.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you have to have like a 45-minute lecture before you get to the song about history or anything like that. But, it was mind-boggling that such a great rock band was. It's like, obviously they're still touring today, so they're successful. They're not selling millions upon millions of albums, but not every band is going to be able to do that, but they're still touring and making money and all that stuff. But it in a lot of ways, let's put it out there, if they were four white guys and they made the same exact album, they'd probably be bigger.
Oh, yeah. It was a great album. They were entertaining to watch. It was a good video.
One of my favorite guitar solos as well. Guitar player Vernon Reid, one of those unsung heroes of guitarmanship, in music history here. And I do appreciate the fact that CM Punk, back in 2011, was able to put his foot down and get the rights to this song as his theme song, because it did introduce that band to a whole new group of people, a younger group of people than us, that may not have heard him, because there was a WrestleMania, I believe it was WrestleMania 29, to where in a stadium, Living Colour played live as CM Punk went out to the ring.
Wow.
Similar, and we go back to Joan Jett. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts did the same thing for Ronda Rousey a few years later.
Oh.
So, wrestling can be a way for older musicians that have impactful songs to get their music out there. I mean, if Cyndi Lauper can do it, anybody else can,
Right, which is one of the great things about Cyndi Lauper.
Exactly, because she, even though I'm sure she probably does have opinions about how much of a douchebag Vince McMahon is, she didn't dismiss the art of pro wrestling and the fans that pay to see it that may not know everything that, Vince McMahon did,
Right.
So, Cult of Personality, just one hell of a great rock song. If you don't have any other thoughts, how about you dive into your next choice?
Yeah, I was just trying to remember the words of Cult of Personality.
Look in my eyes, what do you see? The Cult of Personality. And that reminds me too, like I used to follow, when I was on Twitter before I left, I did follow Vernon Reid, and he talked about liking like gourmet food or something like that. And then I responded with, Look in my eyes, what do you see? A duck all orange recipe. And he liked it.
That's funny.
Yeah. But anyway, your next choice.
My next choice. So this one, we were talking about a few moments ago when we were watching some videos, and that is Freedom 90. It's one of my favorite videos ever. I think I was having a really good time being alive at that point. I don't know, because I loved that. I just loved it. I was like on the cusp of independence, I think. And that is what I really connected with that song and all the things that the people in the video were doing, right? So they were doing stuff, they were mostly by themselves, doing things for themselves, taking a bath, dancing, doing whatever it is that they felt like doing while looking beautiful. And I really liked that idea.
Agreed. Agreed. Like, I'm not a huge fan of George Michael. Back when I did Tim's Tremendous Tapes, when I did an episode on some of the people that were nominated for the Rock Hall, that was the year that he was nominated. I believe he did end up getting in. And I did feature this particular song here because of the ones that he did that I did like. This is probably top of the list. But I think one reason, knowing some of the backstory behind it, one reason I do like it is the fact that he had zero shits to give at that point. Like, he didn't want to be that MTV type of musician anymore. He understood that to make the music he wanted to make was going to involve having a smaller audience. And he didn't care because he wanted his freedom. Freedom for him meant, yeah, maybe you play to a smaller group of people and not an arena or or a stadium or something like that. But you can put out whatever you want at that particular point. And just the song.
And you not only that, you can do whatever you want in your personal life. Like, that was certainly at a time when record labels were telling people what to do to protect their images.
And the image with George Michael at that particular time was that he
Heartthrob.
was a ladies' man,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, being able to break away from that allowed him the ability to live his life more freely. Of course, I think now of that incident in Beverly Hills, to where he was at a rest stop that I guess gay people frequented because they knew they could use it as a pickup site, but there was an undercover cop there.
Mm-hmm.
But, and so he got arrested, but the fun part was how the interviews that he did after the fact, and he was like, okay, yeah, I'm gay. And I went there because I wanted to get laid, and there was this guy there, like, what else is he there for? And that's a very broad generalization of what he said. He was more articulate than I just put it, but he basically said just that. And
Like, what's the problem? These are two consenting adults.
yeah, exactly. But I also listened to this song a lot during my last couple months at Apple. When I knew I was
Yeah.
going to be on my way out, I would go into work and just have this song blasting because this and Bad Reputation, I just needed something to pump me up. And this song, again, easily one of his best, one of his worst, Last Christmas. Fuck that guy. Last Christmas.
It's almost time for Last Christmas.
Yeah, but thankfully I don't work at a place where I have to listen to that song every fucking day.
I know, you're so lucky you get to pick the music at your place of business.
Oh, yeah. Singing Cats Are Cunts with Dogs is great. Anyway, any other thoughts on George Michael?
No,
All right, how about I dive into my last choice?
that's great.
All right. This is a song that I actually included on the original Battle for State Supremacy, the one that wasn't rigged. It is from Madonna. This is, I feel, the first track really that she kind of broadened her scope. What do I mean by that? Something like Material Girl, like a Virgin and stuff like that are great for what they are, but they were throwaway in a sense. It's
It's
like,
a much more sophisticated song and performance.
The one I'm about to say.
Yes.
Yes. It actually was introduced to the world, I believe, through a Pepsi commercial because Pepsi did not know what the ultimate video was going to be. But once the video debuted, Like a Prayer, I think easily one of her best songs. I do not bring this up as a reference to the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, even though we did watch that the other day, and that song was featured prominently in a fight scene at the end of the movie. To me, it's just one hell of a great song. I think the video is, I don't. There are some people, like, at the time the video came out, it was controversial because people in America were like, Black Jesus? Even though if you have any sense of one, history, two, geography, and where people live, people that lived in the Bethlehem area were going to have darker skin.
Yes.
So.
But even if that weren't true, who the fuck cares?
Exactly. Because it's not, even though the main setting was in a church, it's not like that it's not like, the guy had a sign around his neck stating Black Jesus.
Well, I mean, he was clearly Black Jesus. Like,
but again, they, quibbling there, I guess, but it was boundary pushing, but in a very positive way, because it made people like you and I, as the audience watching it, think, really. Because we did, like I mentioned with the Living Color example, grow up in a time to where people would be extremely ignorant and racist when they were talking about stuff on national TV.
Yep.
And so music videos like this, I feel, were very much important in terms of reaching younger people like you and I, and so that by the time we got to the adult age, we could be like,
Right. They developed in us a sense of outrage that we would later use for the common good. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, we got to learn the lesson of that experience for that person who came before us, so that we feel like badasses instead of being, whatever, taken advantage of or whatever.
Yeah, because the video is, the story it tells in the video is that, Madonna sees a woman being sexually assaulted by a group of white guys, but somehow, but the black guy in question comes and, stops the white guys from doing what they were doing, but then that's when the cops show up. And then, he's in jail and all that. But by the end of the video, Madonna does the right thing and goes to the cops and say, I saw these guys do it.
Mm-hmm.
So the black guy ended up getting out of jail at that particular point, which again, even in the 80s.
Right. It's somehow problematic. Yeah. And they go skipping off into the sunset. Like, literally.
Yeah, like not. I mean, like if you think about it, like you don't know where the story was taking place, where geography wise the story was taking place. Because if it was taking place in Alabama, for instance, who knows if the cops would have cooperated at all. The cops may have just gone to the white people and said, this woman said this, and she lives here,
Right, exactly.
But Like a Prayer, I think, if there is if Madonna had a top 5, I would be shocked if this song was not on her top 5 of songs that she feels are her absolute best. I think it's one hell of a great song.
I do too. It's a wonderful song. I'm glad to hear you like a Madonna song.
Yeah, I mean, I'd put her in the greatest hits category. Like, I don't know if I would definitely buy of just a full album or something like that, but greatest hits I would definitely check out. Yeah. How about
you wouldn't pay $300 for a ticket to her concert?
Oh fuck no.
That's how much they are.
No.
I think like a t-shirt is like $100.
Ew.
It's so expensive. I don't even think she's toured in a decade.
Yeah, she's off in England trying to get rid of her Michigan accent. I don't know. But anyway, let's hear your last choice about a totally different artist.
No, it's totally not. It's about the same person. It's about one
And I
Madonna.
believe it's from the same album.
It is from the same album.
There we go.
And what I want to say about this is that it's a great demonstration of her flexibility and her ability to influence style, that she is able to present these two very different personas in terms of the look, the expressions, the movement of the body between these two, between the Like a Prayer Madonna and the Vogue Madonna.
And that is your choice, Vogue.
And that is my choice, is Vogue.
All right.
Vogue is great. It involves, drag queens, and it was one of those videos that felt like accepting, and it felt like Madonna was a welcoming, accepting person.
And if I'm not mistaken, obviously Vogue was a style of dancing, in clubs at that particular time. But if I'm not mistaken, Vogue was kind of going out of fashion before she came out with that song, and it kind of brought it back.
Oh yeah, yeah, and like now it's still very popular, voguing competitions.
Yeah, how could you go wrong? But that yeah, that was a great era. Like that was the Like a Prayer album was probably her biggest album because it had so many great songs on there. So many great videos came from that.
What's funny is that we're like old people, and so we remember when these videos like came out, like the world premiere of these videos. And people who did not live during that period, who are now picking out their own music, obviously, they they get just the greatest hits at the end of the day. Like
Yeah,
we do with Motown. Like we don't get excited about a Motown record coming out, right? We get to enjoy the greatest hits of Smokey Robinson. At least that's how I've consumed music. I haven't listened to the albums of people that I'm not really excited about, other than a greatest hits album.
yeah. I mean, we could probably say the same thing about the Beatles. I mean, us in terms of when we discovered it. Yeah, it wasn't like us turning on the TV and Ed Sullivan's on and the Beatles are on for the first time. That was a
Right.
much different experience. Our
Yeah.
parents
Yeah,
got
yeah,
got
yeah,
to be able
yeah.
to.
It's the context.
Yeah, yeah. So, and also too, I think it does speak to how music is delivered today because even if a person isn't subscribing to a music service to where they could just go to this song immediately, they could just pop on YouTube. Even if they don't have a YouTube premium subscription, they could still pop on like a Prayer or Vogue or something like that and immediately get that satisfaction. And yeah, there may be something lost in that, but would I trade it for anything? No, because I love having the access to all kinds of music.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wouldn't trade that for anything because at the end of the day, if I had to go back to a point to where the only music I could listen to is music that I purchased in terms of like buying an album or something like that, like I would still probably listen to just rock because
Yeah.
that's what I know. That's what I know
Right.
I will generally like.
Yeah.
So yeah, streaming's done some good.
Yes. Agreed.
Anyway, any other thoughts on music videos? Like this, there are still plenty of music videos being made today. Like I don't it's like we will never ever ever get back to a point to where MTV will go back to playing music videos again because if you read enough about the history of MTV, you will know that the fact that they played music videos kind of lost them money.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it wasn't really a money making business until they started categorizing it into we will play heavy metal on Saturday nights and call it Headbangers Ball. And then, and then from there, they stopped playing music altogether.
Right. Because they didn't need to.
They didn't need to, but with technology being the way it is too, like we can put on YouTube and have a nice little playlist of music videos just play over and over.
Yeah, and I mean, local, at this point, if you have an iPhone, you can make a badass music video. So, bands still do that. Like, local bands will make videos that people can watch on YouTube.
Jomo and the Possum Posse.
Exactly, exactly. But, it's more democratic now than it was then. And so, in that sense, much better to have streaming.
Yeah, music videos are not dead. I don't think they're going to die. It's just we get them in a much different way now. I think people, like if somebody snapped their fingers and we went back to an MTV type of era today, you would have a lot of young people really pissed off.
Why?
Well, not being able to access the music that they want to hear. Maybe they don't want to see a Bobby Brown video. They want to immediately go to a Madonna video or something like that.
Right.
So, yeah, because the democratization of how we ingest music videos these days allows people the choice to be able to choose what they play next and next and next.
Or not choose and just have it play at you with the algorithm.
Exactly.
Some people really don't do that. There's some people who really believe in owning the media itself. There are some people who believe at least having a downloadable on hardware kind of thing.
For me, I kind of get that. And I agree with that somewhat. If you were really passionate about a particular band, buying the physical album is not a bad thing. But the benefit of streaming for me, again, just boils down to the fact that you can taste test a lot of stuff that in the past you would not have been able to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. How about we take a quick break and let one of our friends in the podcasting world talk about their show?
Sounds great.
Town Podcast is a podcast that features your town's dark, wild, and sometimes unbelievable past that will have you thinking there is no way that really happened here.
Matt, Meg, and Zach dust off the books and hit the streets and the occasional nursing home to unveil your town's past.
From small towns to where we live to big cities before they were what they are today, this is your town, your stories.
All right, welcome back. Before we wrap things up this week, I want to talk kind of briefly about an interesting documentary that we saw. You saw a few episodes of it. I saw the complete thing. It is on Max. It is called Call Me Ted, about one Ted Turner. Interesting documentary. I think you do have to take into consideration the fact that Ted Turner used to be on the board of Time Warner for a while, so the fact that it is on the Max app kind of should make people a little skeptical. I think that there may have been some whitewashing of history. You don't become a billionaire by being a nice guy. Also, I think what I did appreciate about it was that, he did at the very least try to use his power and his money that he obtained over the years to fight for some good things. Like they did talk about, like he is one of the people responsible for the regrowth in the bison population in the United States.
He also established the UN Foundation by giving the UN $1 billion.
Pretty intense, yeah. And I guess as they talked about in the documentary, when he made that announcement, before he made that announcement, he was having dinner with the then UN chief Kofi Annan and did not tell him. So Kofi Annan, when he heard this, was just as surprised as everybody else.
Oh wow.
Now we've have talked about other billionaire foundations like the Bill Gates Foundation or something like that. So I'm sure it's a similar type of thing to where he's able to be the quote unquote philanthropist with this money, but it's still stuff that's not going to affect his bottom line in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got 1 billion, that's all you need. I mean, how many billions does one person need?
Exactly. Like, if anything, I think it showed that he, in terms of entertainment, or delivering news, had some right ideas. Because CNN, back when he was in charge of it, it was a much different beast than what it is today. It wasn't the personality-driven, extravaganza that it is today that nobody's watching. It was purely news. And yes, there were some shows like Crossfire, but the idea of Crossfire was to get a prominent conservative and a prominent progressive to be able to talk about the issues. And I don't think that is a bad idea for a show. Like billionaires are generally going to be scumbags, but like this is like one of our scumbags. It wasn't like an Elon Musk type of deal.
Right.
To where it was all about look at me, type of deal. Like I did do some searching for Ted Turner controversies, and a lot of it involved him spouting stuff, out of his mouth that he would ultimately end up apologizing for. Also, let's take into account that, as the documentary showed, he was the longtime owner of the Atlanta Braves. And if you think about, this became prominent once the Atlanta Braves started getting good enough to be in the World Series, but the tomahawk chop.
Yep.
And when the crowd would do that chant, I'm not going to replicate the chant here, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's, I'm sure he has his skeletons in his closet. I don't want to give the impression that I think he's one of the greatest men in history, but at the end of the day, because people are nuanced, because a person is not all good or all bad, you have to judge them by their actions. I think history will show that, he did do a lot of good for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Also, I was disappointed, but I kind of understand why, about how they didn't really have the time to dive into how he did kind of help professional wrestling. Because in 1988, he purchased Jim Crockett Promotions. That was the wrestling company that had Ric Flair as the champion and all that, and that became WCW. And even though the Superstation TBS was on in most of the country, Jim Crockett Promotions, similar to a lot of the other territories, but had a much bigger reach, stuck to somewhat a smaller geographical area. It wasn't like a worldwide thing like the WWF was at that time, or AEW is now, even though AEW only has like 5 people showing up for shows or something like that. Yeah. Sarcasm, folks, but anyway, he did help because in one of the WWE documentaries about what they call the Monday Night War, they actually had footage of a deposition that Ted Turner gave in a lawsuit that the WWE did, and Ted Turner talked about the fact that he wanted to buy it because he wanted a wrestling company to compete. He didn't think McMahon should have the entirety.
The only one.
Yeah, he shouldn't be the only one putting professional wrestling out there for the masses to enjoy. And even though WCW did ultimately end up going out of business, the fact that even for a couple of year period that they were the number one company in the world kind of speaks a lot to his belief in what wrestling could do. Because like I talked about before, I mean, we've talked about Ted Turner before, like one of the first things that got his station WTCG, which became WTBS, in terms of getting it popular enough to become a superstation, was professional wrestling. And yeah, it's not high art in any way, shape, or form, but I think he did value the entertainment aspect. And there were plenty of times to where him and Jane Fonda would show up for like pay-per-views and be in the crowd.
Oh, so fun.
Yeah, so that was also another interesting thing about the documentary as well. Jane Fonda and Ted Turner are no longer married. They haven't been married for a long time, but she was a prominent figure in that documentary. So I think it does speak well to the both of them that they have that type of relationship to where they could still be friends and, and talk, about their relationship, the ups and downs, because Ted Turner was a womanizer. But interesting fellow. Again, scumbag, but he's our scumbag. Because he did do some, like the bison thing alone. Because I guess there were like less than 1,000 alive
Oh yeah.
when he bought the ones that he did for his ranch in Montana and was able to get it up to over 40,000. He did, and these restaurants are still open. Did open a restaurant that served bison meat, but as he said, by having these restaurants open and become successful, there would be more demand for it. And by more demand, more bison would be bred. And that did increase the population even more.
Yeah, but you're breeding them to be farm bison. Like, that's not really bringing back the wild species of bison unless you go out and hunt them.
I mean, yeah, he has the restaurants. Okay, like I said, he's a scumbag, but he's our scumbag.
Right? You're just talking about how, like, he brought it back from the brink of extinction, and it's like, so he could eat it. Like, it's so fucked up.
Yeah, it's not a perfect world, people, but because also too, like it's like he did have causes that us as progressives could be like, yeah, we can get behind that, but he also loved money.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of what I mean too about he's a scumbag, but our scumbag type of deal. Like he's a complicated guy, and you can't really judge somebody based on bad actions or good actions. You got to take everything into consideration. Any other thoughts on Ted Turner?
Nope.
You're like, I want to get half and half. Shut up. All right. Each Monday, we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
So long.
Thank you. Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
On YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye, darling.